Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to We Need to Talk with Tony Lindsay. I am your host, Tony Lindsay, and I'm only going to be on here for just a couple of minutes today because I wanted to talk about a topic that I think is just been kind of floating around there. People don't really seem very comfortable with the conversation. And so I decided I want to talk about it because, as we know, certain conversations tend to be taboo, especially when we're discussing politics. And I think sometimes the best way to get through these, to get out of the conflict, is to go through it. The only way out is through. And so what I want to do is just kind of share my thoughts a little bit on some of the issues that I think we encounter when we integrate racial identity into our politics. And as you already see by the title of this live, you'll see that I think it says Black conservatives, right? Wait, what's the elephant in the room when it comes to Black conservatives? And, over the past few weeks, ever since Donald Trump won the election, like, number one, there were a lot of Black conservatives that have come onto the scene who I would argue played an integral role in Donald Trump winning this election. Now, a lot of those names you probably never heard of, but I can assure you that those people, they did make an impact. They did make a difference in this election. And one of the things that I think people don't understand is that while many African Americans, many Black people who Black people in the United States, we tend to be a more conservative people when it comes, let's say, ideologically. We live our lives more conservatively. But for some reason, we tend to vote overwhelmingly with liberals in every election. So while if you think ideologically, if you think the way that we live our lives, even as it pertains to spirituality, Christianity, you'll see that um, Black people in the United States, they live a certain way, but they also tend to vote a certain way. And I think a lot of that is due to manipulation. I think a lot of that is due to propaganda. But I also lay a lot of the blame with the fallacy of the two-party system. I believe that we've been presented with a lot of false choices that make us feel like we have to choose between lesser evils and compromise as it pertains to our own racial identity or appreciation and respect for our own culture. And I see that on both sides. I see that on the left. I see that on the political right, where you have a lot of Black people who feel like they have to compromise who they are in order to be accepted with the rest of the group. Now, since Donald Trump got elected, we know there was a big major fight going on, right? But at the same time, ever since the election was over, it seems like people kind of feel like, oh, the work is done. Whether you're on the left or the right, I'm speaking mostly to independents here, though, because I think a message was sent out that the American people were just tired of the status quo. They were tired of the way things were going. And I think this was a message that was particularly borne out in quote unquote minority communities. You saw pretty much every demographic, they voted more red this election. But if you were to talk to someone on the street, if you were to talk to like just the average Black person on the street, if you were to talk to the average Latino on the street, most of those people, they would not have told you that they were voting for Donald Trump. And that element, I think that's one of the elements of the social anxiety, the social pressure that is put on people, quote unquote, people of color, to comply with the going orthodoxy of the group that they're told they're supposed to align with. And so you saw a lot of Democrats. You saw a lot of Democrats, but a lot of Black Democrats, a lot of Hispanic Democrats, a lot of Democrats overall who voted red. They didn't want to speak about it, but I think this election showed that there were a lot of people who voted for Donald Trump who were afraid to openly say that they were doing it. Why? That's the question. The question is why? Why were people doing that? Now we know people were doing that due to this pressure that is placed upon you in society. Yes, because of stigmatization. Yes, Miss Lucky. People have been stigmatized. People have been told that if you don't do what you're supposed to do, and I'm talking about black people here because this is about black conservatives. If you don't fall in line with what the rest of the group says, then you are somehow a bad person. You're a traitor. You're a sellout. You're not worthy of being called a black person. You're a traitor to your race. But here's the thing. I've been noticing this same level of pressure on the conservative right. Now, as a person who's lived the majority of my life voting Democrat, I understand what it is to be inundated with this pressure to fall in line with the group as it pertains to liberal politics, even though I've witnessed those politics destroy my community. But then it's another thing when you see people on the so-called political right who claim to be conservatives, but yet they still subscribe to the same toxic groupthink of labeling people and subjecting each other to this sort of purity test in order to be accepted into the group. I think this is largely why a lot of people in this country, the majority of people in this country, identify as independent because they feel politically homeless, because they know on one side things are a little bit too far to the left, the other side things are a little bit too far to the right. And so they try to find some space somewhere in the middle where they believe and hope common sense resides. But unfortunately, when you decide to make a decision, like let's use this election, for example, we made a decision. A lot of black folks decided, you know what? Not even just black folks. I think a lot of the country, they decided, listen, things are going too far and we need to try something different. And so for a lot of black people, I think this is a new realm as it pertains to the conservative side of politics, even though many of them tend to live their lives as conservatives. But what many of those same black conservatives are noticing is that they're being subjected to the same litmus test on the right that they've previously been subjected to on the left. You understand? So what we're facing now is this weird crossroads of politics and culture, where the politics are telling you to deny and outright refute your culture in order to be indoctrinated or welcomed into the group. And this presents the quandary that a lot of black people in this country, they have to deal with when it comes to engaging in politics, which is why I think you see so many of them who don't want to even bother, so many who are disenfranchised from the process. Now, I voted for Donald Trump unapologetically because Donald Trump was delivering the policies that I wanted to see based on the experience of his presidency and comparing it to what we're experiencing now. It was a no-brainer. But I also watch people in this rabid, this weird frenzied psychopathy, if you want, where it was like you weren't allowed to think for yourself. Give me 1 second. Yeah, I didn't want to switch cameras. Where it's like people just didn't want to abandon the group. Everyone felt like they just had to do whatever the media was telling them. And so you found people in new spaces that they weren't familiar with. But here's the thing, because I want to get back to the topic, what I'm talking about, where it comes to black conservatives and the elephant in the room. That's specifically this conversation. That's the context of this conversation. Now, the elephant in the room, as it pertains to black conservatives, is their blackness. It's their race. It is their culture. Black conservatives in the conservative space continue to be subjected to this purity test where they are somehow put in the position where they feel this pressure to denounce any sort of affiliation, attachment to, or belonging to their own racial group. Now, we can all aspire for a world that is colorblind and, you know, race doesn't matter. We all bleed the same color blood. Yes, that's wonderful. But when you constantly inundate people with this expectation that they must deny who they are in order to assimilate into the group, that's a problem. Same thing we do with people who immigrate from other countries. Yes, you come to this country, you should have a love for this country, you should assimilate into this country. But I would never expect a person who comes from another country or another culture, I would never want them to deny their culture or who they are. And that is what you're seeing, whether it is with Democrats or Republicans. This is a problem that we have to identify in order to properly reach across racial lines, class lines, party lines. Because at the end of the day, we're allowing these corporate political structures to rule while we continue to fight over nonsense. Now, one quick second. I don't know. Do I have any moderators on my TikTok right now? Because if I do, I would ask that you remove all of the trolls, because this is not the conversation for them. Because unfortunately, and it's so funny, Elon Musk posted about that shit. I think it was this morning I saw it, or yesterday, that that there are a lot of trolls on social media that try to get you invested into the drama to take your focus off of the mission, and we can't fall into that anymore. So, Neek, if you're in there, Riri, I don't know if you're in there, but whoever's in my TikTok, because I got my TikTok streaming at the same time. Let me show y'all. See, my TikTok is running at the same time while I'm talking here, and you can't see it on this screen, but the comments are like flowing throughout the TikTok. And I've already seen certain bad actors who entered this. I don't mind. They can be here in the stream, but we're going to be respectful. Now, here's what prompted me to do this video today. Now, I am unapologetic in stating incontrovertibly that there is rampant racism on the political left within the Democrat Party, all of their operatives. It is their policies. I double down 10,000% on that, and I'm willing to debate anyone in that. But at the same time, it can easily be identified that there is a lot of racism that continues to reside on the political right. Now, I'm not talking about Donald Trump, because some of y'all, and a lot of y'all, my Democrat friends, you're gonna think, oh yeah, Democrat Trump told you. I'm not talking about Donald Trump. And here's the thing: I understand that there's a difference between Donald Trump and the people who follow Donald Trump, just as there's a difference between Obama, Biden, or whoever, and the people who follow them, the people who support them. I think the problem is we've forgotten that these political parties and these candidates, they don't necessarily represent all of us in the way that we all think. We all think differently. But what I saw today, I turned on my I logged into my TikTok, and as soon as I logged in, I saw a panel with majority white folks in the panel, and there was a black conservative in there. There were actually two black conservatives in there, and I was listening to the rhetoric, and it was disturbing to say the least. But then the comment came up about, well, race, which always seems to come up in these circles. And the black conservative was basically speaking from a position of, listen, I don't want, we need to, be one American people, the division. We don't want to deal with the division. And one of the white conservatives on the panel, he said something to the effect of, I'm proud of my white American history. And so the black conservative on the panel said, well, what about slavery? He said, did your family own slaves? And the white conservative said, oh, hopefully, I hope they did. This is the type of disrespect that they show to Black conservatives quite regularly, from what I've seen on a lot of these, like these TikTok panels. And I notice it only really takes place in conservative spaces, because while on the left there is a lot of racism, I don't see it as overt as I do on the right. Now, meaning on the left, there's a lot of racism from the left. Trust me. But it's more delivered more so through this paternalism, this shut up, we'll take care of this, we know what's best for you, we got this, you're not so smart, I got this. But then on the political right, and I'm talking about some conservatives, because there are a lot of really good conservatives out there, white conservatives. But there is this group, just like there's a group on the left, there's this group within the conservative movement of people who are invested in not only chaos, but I would say specifically anti-Blackness. And I think that is rooted in some cases, it may be rooted in trauma, because I think there are a lot of white conservatives who have just been tired of having the label of racist thrown at them just because they don't agree. And I agree with that, because I know a lot of white people on the left and right who are just so afraid of being labeled as a racist that quite often they just don't engage in certain conversations, or they develop this weird little hatred almost for Black people and quote unquote people of color. But I'm going to be straight up, Black people. And I've talked about this many times, because on the Democrat, let's talk political party, right? With Democrats, and liberalism, right? Especially with white liberals, they tend to weaponize race against their racial opponents. And the people that they use the most in that weaponization of race is Black people. They use Black people. If a white conservative says, hey, I don't agree with DEI, boom, that person is a racist. They're a white supremacist, all of that. But there are a lot of Black people who don't agree with it also. There are a lot of Black people who didn't agree with affirmative action. So when you decide that these people are evil, they're bigoted, they're racist, they're hateful because they don't agree with you, you're not interested in finding out why they believe the things they do. You don't know anything about how it may have affected them, the lens through which they view it. All you know is that you've labeled them and they are the bad people, and do not talk to them, and they must be punished. You know what I'm saying? And look, and you know what? Let me put this on the screen. Doug Funny says, I'm always afraid of being called a racist just because I am white. And DEI was a great example. Now, to those of you who are watching this, do you think because Doug said that he is now automatically a white supremacist? Because I'll tell you, a shitload of Democrats will say just that. And why do they do that? They do that to prevent us from having conversations with each other, good faith conversations, open dialogue with each other. This is how you shut down the conversation. Why do they want to shut down the conversation? Why? Because they want to keep us fighting while they continue to preserve their own privilege and agenda. I'm talking about the establishment. Now, that's on the left. But on the right, you have a lot of people on the right who are so exhausted with being called racist and extremists, MAGA extremists and terrorists and all these types of labels for them, white supremacists, that it gets so off-putting. The moment that they hear anything about Black person, white person, they don't even want to have the conversation, and they immediately tune out, they shut their brains off, and that's it. But it's not helping. I know a lot of people think that the easiest way out is to jump over it, skip it. It's not. The easiest way out is through a straight line. You have to be willing to have the conversation in order to get past it. And that means some of us are going to have to identify some of our own biases, some of our own ignorance, but it doesn't matter. as long as you're willing to learn and grow. That's what's important. We're forgetting that. Or we're subscribing to this cancel culture that it exists on the left and the right. Because it's funny. The moment when I disagreed, because I've made a lot of connections in conservative spaces because I decided I was voting for Donald Trump. And one of the things that I noticed is after watching the lawfare that was committed against Donald Trump, I was just like, man, I can't take this shit no more. Like, whether you on the left or the right, I felt like I had to vote for Donald Trump because dangerous precedents were set. The moment I did that, I got attacked by every Democrat, friends, family members. Everybody on the left was like, Tony, you're a sellout, you're a traitor, blah, 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 blah. Luckily, I was raised in a family that doesn't really give a shit about what people think about us. But it was interesting for me to see the reaction. And then on the right, I saw people who embraced me. Welcome, brother. Oh, they were just so loving. And I'm like, well, it's just because they saw me say I'm voting for Trump. But then the more conversations I started to have with those on the conservative right, the more I started to realize that, damn, these people, they share a lot of the same concerns that I have. They got a lot of concerns, the same concerns that people from my community. Look, someone in the comment section on TikTok just said Uncle Ruckus. That's an example. Somebody remove that person. Neat, can you block that person? That's an example of the type of commentary that I get from the ignorant trolls on social media who try to create this division and the hostility and the arguing and the back and forth so that people don't listen to each other. Those are the people that you got to block. Remove them. There are people who are directly invested in chaos. And unfortunately, those people are not just on the left. Those people are also on the right. There are a lot of anti-black people who are on the right. Got to call it out because it's true. You have a lot of black conservatives who go into these conservative spaces that are occupied by a lot of whites and other groups, and they embolden these people to engage in anti-blackness. It's not even that, they become apologists or they just remain silent. There's now this growing group of black conservatives who are emboldening bigotry and racism from their white conservative counterparts, telling them, don't apologize for being a racist. Say this, say that. Yeah, black people, they're all this. And it's getting disgusting to watch it. And I see a lot of good people who are conservatives. A lot of them white conservatives, black, Asian, whatever. I see the majority of those people, I do see them not engaging, and I see them it's off-putting to them. But I do see a certain group of conservatives who are becoming emboldened by that sort of behavior, and they are espousing very overtly racist views. And the problem is those people tend to be the ones who get the most airtime. We cannot give those people the airtime. You got to allow those people to drift off into the obscurity that they've already created for themselves. And we're in this era of clickbait and rage baiting. It's easy to piss somebody off by saying something inflammatory or racist and and just derail the panel. If you're on a panel and everyone's arguing and yelling at each other, it's easy for chaos to ensue. But guess what? I think it's a little tougher right now, but it should be easier for us to ignore it. Just don't pay him any mind. That's why I like when these people come into my TikTok lives and they put like some of the nonsense in the chat. I think it's cool because I can identify them and I call them out because I want the chat to be able to see it. Remember, social media is not a real place. And that's the thing that I think people need to understand. Social media ain't a real place. You got a lot of people on social media who are going to say things only because they're on social media. They would never say that shit in the real world. They would never say it to you, to your face. They won't even dare to espouse most of the things that they're saying because they know what would happen if their employer hears it or if their clients hear it. So social media has just become this cesspool where all types of nonsense thrives. But remember, we dictate the direction in which social media should be moving. We don't have to give these people the airtime, but that also means we have to be brave enough to call it out when we see it. We have to stop being passive. If a conservative would say that Democrats would yell racist, I don't really know what you're talking about, but you're probably right. Democrats on TikTok are sick. See, this is the thing. There are a lot of people saying, yeah, Democrats are, and yes, I think a lot of that behavior we see, I think there's a disproportionate amount of that behavior. Absolutely. Like, at least I would say, no, not even just TikTok. Shit, that's all over social media. It is disproportionately coming from the left, but we can't ignore what we're seeing on the right. And I'm more solution oriented, and I like to actually dig into things in order to understand why we're facing the things that we're facing. And I think that a lot of this is based in emotional responses to things that they cannot control. Well, they believe they cannot control. But the truth is, you can control it. You don't have to give those people life. You don't have to give them oxygen. Mute them. Get rid of them. What conservative group were you watching this morning? I'm not going to put those people on blast because I don't think they deserve the energy. I don't think those people deserve the airtime. They know who they are. I know some of them are watching this live right now, but I saw that. And it's disgusting to see that we've allowed raging racists to be so open with it that they can derail something that could have been a great new alliance. Because remember, think about it. If you're a Republican, right? If you're somebody on the right, and you know that historically, people of color have not really been so supportive of the right due to propaganda, due to this labeling of the right being full of racists. How do you all on the right, who know you are not racist, feel when these unapologetic racists grab hold of the microphone and start speaking for the rest of you? You think it's okay to just sit back and let them cook? Or do you think it's your responsibility to hold them accountable and let the world know that these people do not represent the larger conservative movement? It's about accountability, folks. It's always been about accountability. And accountability means stepping up and doing what is uncomfortable when no one else wants to do it. Because guess what happens when you do that? You're actually giving other people license to do the same. It's unfortunate that we live in a society of followers. No one wants to speak up. No one wants to say, hey, look, we're not taking this anymore. Even in this election, I see a lot of people celebrating. I'm talking about people on the right and a lot of people, independents too. I see a lot of people who are celebrating. Finally, the American people stood up for what they believe, right? I don't really think so. You know why? Because while all those people voted that way, we know a lot of those same people were afraid to admit how they voted. So you're still afraid. You're still afraid of the mob. You're afraid of being canceled. That's the point. There's more of us than them. Don't allow these people to bully you so much that you think, even though you're voting for certain policies that make sense to you, you must hide and be afraid to say it because you don't want to be judged. And let's be real, you don't want to be misjudged because you know you're not a racist for voting for Donald Trump. You know you're not a sellout for voting for Donald Trump. You understand what I'm saying? How about there are people who voted for Donald Trump because they were voting against censorship? How about that? How about there were people who were voting for Donald Trump because they care about this indoctrination of their children with agendas that sexualize and confuse them? How about people voted for Donald Trump because they want secure borders and they don't want to have to be forced to compete with people who are not legally allowed to be in this country? Does that make me a bigot, a xenophobe, or racist for saying that? That's politics of laziness. That's politics of emotion. And that's why I always say to black people, all of you, get out your feelings when it comes to politics. Vote based upon your political interests and understand that there will be a time where those who you typically do not agree with, people who are even your enemies, will share your interest at some point in time. That's why I say an ally does not necessarily make them a friend. But when it comes time to forge those alliances in furtherance of an agenda, to fight off an agenda that is against the American people, we have a responsibility to put our differences aside and form Voltron, because we have a common goal. Get on code, people. Get on code. But I will say to any black conservative and black Democrat, black liberal, don't ever feel like you have to compromise who you are or tolerate disrespect in order to be included in the group. Because if that is the condition of you being welcomed into that group, then you're in the wrong fucking room. Stop allowing people to disrespect you in the name of inclusion. And that's the crazy thing. You have people that are putting you in the position where you outright reject who you are in order to conform. And this is all being done under the guise of inclusivity. We're all different. Whether you're white, black, Asian, Hispanic, gay, straight, whatever it is, we're all different. I don't want to live in a colorblind society. I don't want to live in a society where we don't see each other's differences, because that suggests that the differences are a bad thing. We should be striving to live in a society where we see the differences and we embrace them. We appreciate them. We appreciate the diversity in who we are. And that is how we all go forward together. It's common sense, isn't it? So my suggestion is, let go of the labels, folks, because the moment someone starts to subject you to a purity test on whether you're an authentic liberal or an authentic conservative, that's not someone who you need to be involved in a conversation with. If someone calls you, what is it? A fake conservative or fake MAGA, bro, then I would argue that they don't know what the hell MAGA is. Because it's you know, it's crazy too. A lot of people on the right who do that, you're actually reinforcing the view of the left on what MAGA truly means. So I would suggest to the people on the right, those conservatives who do not agree with the hate, the chaos, the disrespect, the racism, I would suggest that you all take the charge of holding the people who are standing in your circles accountable, and if necessary, removing them from your circles. Everyone isn't going to make it. I've made that argument time and time again. And that's right. You're tired of picking sides. That's right. You know how many people I've heard, they've said, oh, why do I always have to choose sides? That's the point. You don't. Anyone who tells you that you have to choose a side, if you have not disrespected anyone or you haven't, you got to question that person. Now, I do understand that there are people who are bad actors. There are people who are invested in keeping the fight going for entertainment value, for clicks, for views. Now, if we're going to say that's the side, I don't even call that a side. I just say get rid of those losers. But anyone who makes you feel like you're obligated to choose a team in order to be respected, I would say screw those people. That's it. Plain and simple. Learn to be confident in who you are without feeling like you have to compromise who you are in order to be accepted. No matter who you are. Because I can disagree vehemently with people on the internet, but a lot of these folks, I know them in real life. And you know what happens when we see each other in real life? Oh, what up, Tone? Yeah, what up? Yo, let's go. We're going to get something to eat. We're going to get something to drink. Hey, come see the kids. That's what we do after these TikTok lives and these Facebook and Instagram beefs. We go to dinner together. We spend Christmas with each other. But a lot of y'all on this social media, you're invested in drama. You don't live in the real world. This has been the world you've created for yourself, this fantasy world where nothing exists outside of this. And y'all scared to go outside and touch some grass, bro. Go out into the real world. And to all of you who feel all of these levels of stress by watching all of the conflict, I would suggest that you do the same. Unplug, get off social media for a minute, reestablish those real connections with people, and remember what it was like. Remember what it is to move forward with progress, to actually grow, to connect with people, to have fun in the real world, to build your businesses, whatever it is you're doing. Go back to that. Don't let social media take over. And I know there's a lot of people who make money on social media. Y'all monetize. I get it. The content is, but don't try to get people that you claim to respect to participate in nonsense in order for you to get views. That's corny. That's real corny. What you should do is try to get with those people, try to network, try to build something bigger so you're not reliant upon social media platforms that are telling you what you can and cannot say. Platforms that are censoring you. We should all be on the same side of this fight, whether you're on the left, right, and whatever, as it pertains to censorship. We should all be talking about why it is that Joe Biden is doing everything possible to sabotage the incoming administration. Like, aren't we all Americans? Whether you're on the left or the right, y'all don't care what he's doing? Because he's not just fucking over Donald Trump, he's fucking over you. You, the American people, us. Does nobody care about the fact that Joe Biden has been in serious cognitive decline? He's demented, and he has been even before he won that election. What? Only now because the Wall Street Journal starts to report on it like we didn't know? We've been saying this shit for years, and we've been censored for saying it. Now you see Mark Zuckerberg, you know what I'm saying? All of these dudes trying to cozy up to Donald Trump. Meanwhile, they still have half of us censored. They still got y'all shadow banned. This is crazy. Hold on, I'm sorry. This camera has like a temporary thing on it. But yeah, I'm about to end this live real quick. But yeah, so that's where we are with it. I wonder if they can hear me. You know what? Let me turn this off. Yeah. So the point I'm trying to make is, after all of this, there's a bigger fight out here, and we got to stop investing in these small squabbles that are used to derail the conversations that we need to be having. And I know some people can be very entertaining, fun to be around, but at the end of the day, what are we learning? What progress are we making? That's what it is at the end of the day. We're supposed to be in this for progress, tangible progress. Anyone who's not invested in that progress, anyone who cannot do anything other than talk shit about people on social media, try to create mobs of people to fight each other, people like that, you got to get rid of these people, man. It'll give you a sense of peace, less stress. Let's work together and just do better. Now I'm gonna stay on here for a quick second, but I'm gonna eliminate this. But listen, for those of you out there in the real world, many of you guys I know, some of y'all were mad at me for voting Trump. I hope now y'all see what the hell I was talking about. I hope now you see, because a lot of those announcements that Trump was making, a lot of y'all were hitting me up saying, yo, Tone, damn, yeah, I think you might have been right. Well, I agree with Trump on this. Oh, hell yeah, I agree with that. Y'all seem to be agreeing a hell of a lot with the shit that Donald Trump is saying. So maybe, just maybe, you got it wrong when you said you didn't want to have Thanksgiving with certain family members. Something to think about. Stop letting all of these rich people, all of these wealthy people who don't even know what it's like to live like the majority of you live like, to dictate the conversation. Stop allowing corporate media and the professional managerial class to tell you what you're supposed to be angry about. Because 99.9% of the time, the things that they're telling you to be outraged about are the things that they are trying to feed you to protect their interests, not yours. They keep saying that Donald Trump was this existential threat, this threat to democracy. He wasn't a threat to democracy, never was. Donald Trump has steadily been a threat to the people who he said he was coming after. The swamp, the propagandists, the deep state, the intelligence agencies. All of these people who we all know have been lying to us. Y'all disagree with him? Because if you don't, give the man a chance. That's it. Give the man a chance and stop trying to crash this plane in order to prove a point. Stop trying to hope for the worst to make yourself feel right. Stop shaving your heads and saying you're not going to have sex with your boyfriends as if people care because you're throwing a tantrum because your candidate lost. Your candidate who was probably the worst candidate for president in history. So, Black conservatives, my message to you is stand firm, stand tall in who you are as a conservative and as a Black person. You don't have to compromise in either regard.